Yo, let's get a little vibe check and let's get the good vibes going because perspective is everything in sports, and the Warriors are second place in the Western Conference. So why all the doom and gloom?
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is the good word, everyone. We appreciate you for making Locked On Warriors a part of your day. So many ways to check us out. One way is to join 15,000 other diehard Golden State Warriors fans on our YouTube channel. We got the live post-game shows after the buzzer sounds. We got a chat room. We got comments. It's a good way to check out the show. Also, take us on the go, a much more convenient way, the audio podcast version, Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you get your audio podcast. That is a good way to check us out. Today's episode is brought to you by BILT. Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. What's up, everyone? My name's Charlie Walter. I covered the Golden State Warriors in 2021 and also 21-22 and even 22-23 for 3 seasons there. Got to see the Warriors win a championship in 21-22 for 95-7 the game, which is the flagship station of the Golden State Warriors. Also covered that team on the tube, on the television for CBS News Bay Area, which is KPIX. And on today's show, we're going to prep you a little bit for this Oklahoma City Thunder game coming up, tell you why it is the beginning of a make or break stretch for the Warriors. I mean, we are going to know what this team is made of and whether they have moves to make them better by the new year. I mean, when I read this thing out to you, you're going to probably agree with me. But first things first, let's take a step back. 12-5, 17 games in. If I would have told you when we were talking in June, and I appreciate everyone for hopping on the show, leaving your comments, your opinions on the Golden State Warriors. I'm a firm believer of respect other people's opinions, man. I mean, at the end of the day, there's no such thing as a wrong opinion, unless you're wrong, factually, statistically, things that back that sort of thing up. Like if I came out here right now and had the same take that I had in the offseason saying Brandon Podziemski's a sharpshooter, I'm just factually wrong. He's not been able to shoot it as well. But if it's an opinion that can't be proven, by all means, go ahead with your opinion. Let's debate. That's the point of the show. It is debating, not me sitting up here saying I'm right, you're wrong, whatever it may be. But when we brought up in the offseason what this team would look like, if you would have said 17 games in, they'd have wins over Boston and Oklahoma City on the road. They would have taken down a top 4 team in the West and Houston on the road. You would have beaten Dallas and Klay Thompson in his return to Chase Center, and you'd be 12-5 in second place in the West. What would your answer have been? In all honesty, I'm waiting for it. Your answer would have been, that's nice. Probably better than expected. At the very least, what we expected. But I think for most Warriors fans, better than expected. So let's put that perspective into this season. Let's also put into the fact that the last 2 games the Warriors lost, they had massive leads at some point. So they're doing things right for extended periods of time. Now we just need to figure out why they cannot close games. Could it be that they're missing now DeAnthony Melton for the remainder of the season? Obviously, Jonathan Kuminga for the last couple of games. When your strength is numbers and you're losing 2 important numbers, I mean, you're losing probably number 5 and 6 in terms of maybe not importance. I mean, you could go even higher on the list, but Melton, one of the starters, Jonathan Kuminga, your 6th man, and you do not have either of those 2. That's just where you stand, and you're going to have to navigate that Melton loss for the rest of the year until you get to the deadline, and we will talk about that in a minute because there's a name floating out there that we actually saw on the hardwood last night in Cam Johnson that would maybe make a little bit of sense if you were willing to be daring with it, to give up maybe some chips that you would like to have, but you can't have your cake and eat it too. But take away the just similar feeling to how the Warriors lost some of their games last year. And, take 45 steps back and just look at this team, not through a microscope, but look at them through a telescope from very far away, and you see a squad that is incomplete, sure, but that's doing everything we asked them to do in the offseason, or at least I asked them to do. I sat in this desk many times in July and August into September, and I said, waiting in the weeds, ready to pounce. The Warriors need to be in a situation where they were one player away from competing. Do we feel that that's the case with the Warriors right now? That if you went out and got that one right piece at the deadline, that this thing could turn around and turn around? I mean, that's just a ridiculous thing to say when you're second place in the West. It's ridiculous. However, I do think there's a large majority of Warriors fans out there that think the Warriors maybe are not as good as their 12-5 record, or they're as good as their 12-5 record, but they're not as good as Boston. They're not as good as Oklahoma City. And they went in there just playing good basketball, won those games, but you would expect maybe down the road that those two teams have a little more firepower. And that's a fair assessment to have. But if you heard Mike Dunleavy and Joe Lacob all offseason, it was, this team's not complete. We're always looking for ways to make this team better. And if we have a solution to make this team better, we're going to go out there and do it. I mean, hell, last year's team took a gander at LeBron James. They will make a move if they feel like there's a move that can help them win now and that won't mortgage and just destroy their future a few years down the road. So the key to this year is proving that you are one piece away and finding who that one piece is at the right time and if he's even possible to attain it. More good news. I mean, Andrew Wiggins has been great. If you had any questions about him returning to 21-22 form, he's answered it. He's been as consistent as anyone. Had 4 straight games of scoring 20, just missed out on it with 18 points. But Curry looks good. Turnovers got to stop, but Curry can still score, and I think we are vastly overstating just the age factor. Now, I will say this. With age comes not being able to play 35 minutes a game. Steve Kerr says the sweet spot is now 32. He only plays 29 in the game against the Brooklyn Nets. And then Steve Kerr says that he's now questionable with some knee soreness heading into a pretty important game early in the season against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But if the Warriors are one player away, who could that guy be? Did we see him yesterday in the game? Could it be Cam Johnson of the Brooklyn Nets? Let's talk a potential path to landing him. This is a PSA for anyone who rents. If you haven't heard of BILT, you're about to thank me. Earning points on rent is now a reality when you pay your rent through BILT. You don't even have to check with your landlord to start earning points. You can use them towards flights, hotel stays, fitness classes, and even your next rent payment. Let me break it down for you. There's no cost to join BILT, and as a member, you'll earn valuable points on rent and your everyday spending. BILT points can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, and even the ones you haven't heard of. There are over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties around the world you can redeem your BILT points towards. Points can also be redeemed towards a future rent payment and unique experiences that only BILT members can access. So if you're not earning points on rent, my question is, why not? Start earning points on rent you're already paying by going to joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That is joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbilt.com/LockedOnNBA. Start earning points on your rent payments today. With Robinhood Gold, you do not need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and the perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard tier with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing does involve risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. All right, I do want to get into one more thing before we start transitioning to the present, because right now the Nets game, it's in the past, everyone. It's in the past. The Warriors lost it. It is what it is. Again, the telescope approach. Warriors are 12-5, but the Nets seemed like the hungrier team, and that's unacceptable. That's a team that's looked at to be tanking. And granted, they have a lot of players that don't typically get as much run, and they're fighting for their NBA lives, so you're going to get their best punch regardless. But come on now. You got to win that game. Gary Payton II, he had the task of stopping Dennis Schroeder in the game. Schroeder was brilliant, 31 points. So while a lot of the talk is surrounding Brandon Podziemski, I mean, Podziemski got his minutes, sure. He played 24 minutes, played more than Moses Moody. I get that. But I thought it was Gary Payton II. If you're going to be pointing fingers to anyone, he was gambling for steals, didn't keep Schroeder in front of him, had some ticky-tack fouls at points in the game, did have some nice finishes down low, and I think Gary's had a pretty good season, but not his greatest game, I don't think, defensively. I mean, he knows his role. He knows what he's on this team for, and he would be the first one to tell you that he did not get the job done. Team game, the entire team did not get it done. The thing that scares me with the remainder of this calendar year is the vibes going sideways. That's the one thing that you cannot happen, because again, theme of the season, we've known this throughout, is just staying above water. The more you can tread, the more your head is above water, the better you will be come January, February. Young players are playing well. Podziemski, Kuminga, Moody, these guys pick it up. All of a sudden you have serious assets. They're not playing well. Brandon Podziemski, who is said to be a coveted piece in the Lowry Markkanen trade, guess what you're trading him for right now? Not Lowry Markkanen. I can promise you that. Vibes going sideways scares me a little bit. That's why this is a huge stretch of games, because we talked about the vibes and how important they are and how good they've looked at this point in the season. But you lose a player to injury for the year, DeAnthony Melton. Jonathan Kuminga misses a couple of games, questionable for a third. Draymond Green, Steph Curry now questionable. All of a sudden, the game that you are a 2.5-point underdog in against the Oklahoma City Thunder, those guys don't play. Kuminga, Curry, Draymond, you're essentially chalking that up as a scheduled loss, which happens from time to time during an NBA regular season. The issue is what comes after that. It then goes to the Phoenix Suns on the road and the Denver Nuggets on the road. Two teams that on paper, two teams standings-wise, you are better than right now, but two teams that are matchup problems, at least the Nuggets for sure with Jokic, and could give you some issues on the road. Then it's Houston at home, who's playing great basketball. You got Minnesota 3 times in 4 games. You got Memphis scheduled in there. Pretty much the entire slate of games taking you all the way to the new year, they're against playoff or play-in teams. The 2 worst teams on the schedule, I would say, is the freebies that you have moving forward. Forget the days of Portland and Utah. The freebies moving forward are Miami and Indiana. 2 games that still are not super easy games. If the Nets can beat you on your home floor, Miami and Indiana can definitely take you down. So you can totally redeem yourself here. That's the good news about running into the schedule. Whereas at the very beginning of the year, the thoughts were, all right, Golden State's winning a couple of these games with asterisks next to them. Maybe not asterisks, but they're beating the hell out of bad teams. So you truly don't know how good they are. We're getting high because they're beating up on these bad teams by 40 points per game. It's like in college basketball when you're shelling terrible teams at the beginning of the year and your Ken Palm goes up. All of a sudden, the Warriors' power rankings are going up internally. Everyone thinks this team's good. Then they beat the Celtics. They beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. They beat the Rockets. They beat the Mavericks. They beat all these teams to where it's, all right, we are legit. You lose D'Anthony Melton for the season. You're missing Kuminga for a couple of games. And after a few losses, we're talking about the Warriors is human again. A team that really on any given night can lose. I mean, you just struggled with the Pelicans missing Zion Williamson and missing half their roster. So that's a huge stretch of games. For those of you that do not think the Warriors are much better than average, if that's the case, if they're just a solid team, they're going to get exposed pretty quickly, and we're going to find out what they're made of by the new year. So enjoy the holiday season. Ready or not, here the Dubs come. We're going to see what they're made of. It's the no more cakewalk stretch. Like I said, easiest game until the new year. It's Minnesota, it's Indiana, it's Miami. It's teams that can still beat you. Now, D'Anthony Melton, how do you replace him? Let's discuss it. Coming up on Locked On Warriors. All right, like many of you out there, we can relate on this one thing. We wear underwear every single day. And like many of you out there, we can relate on this. We don't switch them up often. You find your favorites, you stick with your favorites until you figure out that they're not your favorites at all. You've just been buying them from Target for 20 years, so you continue to wear them even though they kind of stink. For those of you that have not heard yet, Skims now offers men's underwear, and I'm here to tell you that it is worth the hype. I've told you about some of my favorites, but the Cotton 5 Boxer Brief is good stuff. It fits just right. Honestly, it puts the other brands to shame. They hit right at the thigh. They stay there, and that's the key. They don't move around, nice and tight where you need them to be. They do not bag out. They don't give you that 5 p.m. wedgie. If you're a boxer brief guy, then this is the one. And if you like workouts, then go with the Stretch 5 Boxer Briefs. They don't ride up. They don't make you feel like you're wearing gym clothes all day, which is what you want from athletic wear. Shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey, select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever. Also available at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, so strength in numbers. It's the phrase that has been attached to the Golden State Warriors for many, many years. And this year specifically, as Steve Kerr has been going with a 12-man rotation that is shrinking by process of elimination. That's what happens during an 82-game season. Players get hurt, and you just hope that they're not injuries that linger for an entire season. In the case of D'Anthony Melton, that's just what happens. It was the risk that Golden State took bringing in a young player that has been dealing with injuries throughout his young career. He's snake bitten, and the snake got him early in the season. So now how do you replace him? That's the question. You saw how big the loss was of D'Anthony Melton in the game against the Brooklyn Nets. You've seen it a couple games now, but you saw it specifically in the Brooklyn Nets. Fresh legs are huge in this defense. I mean, Jerry Stackhouse wants to attack you. Remember the blitzes, the double team blitzes? Where have those been? Where has that tenacity been? And a lot of it can be said and can be attributed to fresh legs, which when you're losing a player like D'Anthony Melton and Jonathan Kuminga is not playing, that's two members of the team that you're relying on to give you very important legs. But the Warriors are looking for some contributions from young players right now, specifically Moses Moody, Brandon Bajemski, two players that, are averaging 15 plus minutes per game, just about every single game. But how do they find that player that can come in and give you 28, 30 minutes and be on the same tier as an Andrew Wiggins, a Stephen Curry, a Draymond Green? Someone that is Mr. Reliable. You know what you're going to get out of them on a given basis. Well, at this point in the season, you just have to assume that either it's internal development that's going to be happening later than we expected, because I think most would have hoped that if that jump was going to happen from a Moody, from a Kuminga, from a Bajemski, you would have seen it at this point in the season. And yes, players improve vastly as the season goes along every single year. But the biggest jumps, we all know this, the biggest jumps are made in the offseason. I mean, hell, said on the broadcast that the Warriors hadn't practiced in like 6 days because of the back-to-backs and the different, 3 different cities in 4 days. And just the travel schedule alone makes it difficult to get that refining time. That's why the offseason's so huge. And when you see a player come into the season that you thought was going to take this seismic leap and they haven't already, I don't think it's fair just to expect them. I mean, it's fair to expect gradual increase throughout the season, but I don't think it's fair to look at Moses Moody right now and expect him to be someone that puts up 16 and is playing 30 minutes by season's end. I think like many 21, 22-year-olds throughout the league, they are still players that have a role on this team, have a role on their respective teams, but still have a lot of work to do in terms of polishing and in terms of putting all the pieces together. So I'm looking at someone that's established. Now, how do you get that player that's established? It's going to come with, unfortunately, a trade that maybe is going to piss off a lot of the fan base. But that's not why Mike Dunleavy and Joe Lacob do this thing. They do it to get better and to give yourself the best chance to win. And one of those names that's been brought up is Cam Johnson. We saw him for a bit in the Brooklyn Nets game before he got hurt, but he's averaging 19 points on the season. He can shoot the 3 ball. Quite frankly, his ability to shoot it makes him a better fit for this team than, dare I say, Jonathan Kuminga. Could you keep them both? In a perfect world, you'd have both of them. Now, in this mock trade proposed on Tuesday by Fansided's Michael Sains, the Warriors would give up this to get Cam Johnson. Kevon Looney, Jonathan Kuminga, the expiring contract of D'Anthony Melton to get him off the books, and a 2025 first-round pick. You're giving up a first-rounder, you're giving up Kuminga, you're giving up Looney, you're giving up, I mean, we'll throw Melton in there, but at this point, you're not giving up anything with Melton. Seems like a lot to get Cam Johnson. Is he that type of player that's that one guy away from making the Dubs a serious contender? And that's a question that we don't know the answer to right now. And that when I'm looking at the schedule, that this gauntlet's going to tell us whether he could be that guy. Oklahoma City, Phoenix, Denver, Houston, Minnesota. 5 games coming up that are not easy, and it's one game at a time. One game at a time. But for now, let's just take the step back and remember that the Warriors are 12-5 and that they've advanced to the quarterfinals of the NBA Cup. Everything's in front of them. 2nd place in the Western Conference. Tough stretch, though, starting with the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are coming off a 130-109 win over the Sacramento Kings. The Kings have been pretty disappointing and inconsistent at this point in the season. The Thunder have won 2 of their last 3. They did lose to the Spurs in group stage play in the NBA Cup. That same Spurs team, of course, took down the Warriors. And then before that game, they had lost to the Dallas Mavericks as well. But the Thunder right now, the first place team in the West. So it's 1v2. It's 13-4 OKC against the 12-5 Warriors. Hell of a game going on at Chase Center. A great way to get right. Unfortunately, it may be a long uphill fight for Golden State if, in fact, Steph Curry, who's questionable, does not play. Jonathan Kuminga, who's missed the last 2, does not play. If that's the point, you give Moody, you give Pajimski, you give all these guys 30-plus minutes, and you see if the youngsters can hang around with OKC. And one of those weird games that every once in a while you feel like the team that is punting actually plays really hard. I mean, we saw it from the Nets. They were the aggressor. They were the team that wanted it more in the Warriors' own house in that last contest. So 1v2. Can't complain about that. This is Locked On Warriors. We will see you with a live post-game edition right after that Thunder game. And let's keep the vibes going now. Let's keep the vibes going. 12-5, a win, and you're right back on track. This is Locked On Warriors. We're free and available wherever you get your audio podcasts. We appreciate you for tuning in. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you